The information provided on this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your qualified health provider with any questions you may have. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. Reliance on any information provided here is solely at your own risk.
Welcome. This is Birth, Baby. Your hosts are Sierra Morgan and Samantha Kelly. Sierra is a birth doula, hypnobirthing educator, and pediatric sleep consultant.
Samantha is a birth doula, childbirth educator, and lactation counselor. Join us as we guide you through your options for your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. Thank you to our listeners for your continued support. If you enjoy our content, please be sure to like, follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. This helps us gain visibility to other people that could benefit from listening in. Hello, everyone. Today, Sam and I are here to talk to you guys about what everybody wants for their birth, a birth plan, or we can call it a birth preferences sheet because people have big feelings about what we call them sometimes. So, Samantha, what is a birth plan or a birth preferences sheet? And what's the difference if there is one?
Yeah. So a birth plan, when we're talking about birth plans, this is really just your goals for what you want your birth to look like. If things were left up to you and you could decide what your perfect scenario would be, what would that be? So some people, like she said, I'll call them birth plan or birth preference or birth goals, or there's like a million different names for it. There's also a lot of feelings around birth plans, both from people who have them, people who don't have them, providers, nurses. I see nurses talking about birth plans and the good, the bad, and the ugly all the time. So,
oh man, you just reminded me of something that made my blood pressure rise upon thinking about it. Oh, no. We had a client that she's had 2 babies with us now. And with her, you already know what I'm going to say. And for her first baby, she brought her birth plan or birth preferences sheet. By the way, some people don't like the word birth plan because you can't plan the birth. But that's why I oftentimes change the name to birth preferences, because that just means, hey, I prefer these things. It's all in the absence of a medical emergency. This is what I want to happen. And just because one thing gets thrown out because we can't do this thing anymore doesn't mean everything gets thrown out. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We can still do some of these other things. So the client walked in with her birth plan, which I think was a template that we used. I have a template that we go through with people, and they change things based on their preferences, and we talk about each one of the things. And she brought it in, and it was just 1 page. And the doctor told her to come back next time and show it to her when it fits on a Post-it note. And I wanted to scream when she told me that, because that is a dismissive provider who is not caring about what this person is saying. It was a very so spaced out. It's not like there's a whole huge page full of stuff. It's easily readable, but she had big feelings about it.
She sure did. She always has big feelings about birth plans. Just one of those things. Yeah, I mean, I think it gets complicated with birth plans because I think a lot of people do view them as this is me controlling the situation. There's a lot of us who are a little bit type A and we want to plan out every aspect as I want to go into labor at this time and I want to do this and these people are going to be there and I'm going to be in this room and I'm going to have all these beautiful things happening. And in the end, we aren't in charge of how our births look. Our babies are going to decide what they want to do and how they want to do it. And
we could do things to help.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Right. Exactly. We have birth plans that go exactly according to birth plan. Once in a blue
Rarely.
We have birth plans where literally everything on the list gets tossed out. And we have birth plans where we get some things and not other things. That is probably the vast majority. Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about birth plans, what birth scenarios do you think it's important to have a birth plan?
All of them. But I think that it varies on what it looks like in each of these situations. So if we have a client who's preparing for a hospital birth, we have a hospital birth plan. And we do add on every single one, there's a section about cesarean, because I think it's so important to have an idea of some of the things that might be important to you, as long as it's not an emergency and allows for it. I'm just going to give a small example. We're not going to go over everything that's on a birth plan here, but it could be something like skin to skin in the OR, or it could be, I want the drape to be dropped when my baby is born so that I can see them as they rise up and are pulled up from the belly. Little things like that you may not have even considered previously. And you don't want to, in the moment when you've never even considered a C-section and you're being rolled back into one, and they're like, well, do you want this or this? And you're like, oh my God, I haven't had a chance to even think about any of these things. You want to think about it one time, throw it out of the back of your mind, and you only have to pull it up again on that birth plan if it happens. So I do think a C-section birth plan, at least a section of it on there, is important. And so it's a hospital birth. We have a hospital birth plan, and it's just one birth plan. If somebody, like, for example, in Austin, we have birthing suites. It's a low intervention birthing suite in hospital at one of the hospitals. If someone's planning a birthing suite birth, we have one for down there, but we also have one in case of transfer upstairs. So we have two separate ones because there are different things, like they are, there's no such thing as continual fetal monitoring downstairs. So we don't have to say no, intermittent fetal monitoring. That's already what they do. So we don't put that on there. But we have one for upstairs too. And then same with a birthing center or a home birth. You can still have one because, you guys, it's not just like, I don't want you to do this and I don't want you to do this. It can be things like, please make sure only, 2 people are in the room at a time. Like if somebody's overwhelmed by a lot of people in their space. Or it could be yes to vitamin K, no to Hep B, yes to erythromycin. It can be things like that are not so controversial that it's just, I say that. Like, it can be things that are just like your choices, or please remember that I want to labor in the tub. Help remind me. It doesn't have to be something crazy. But so I think a birth preferences sheet is a little bit less necessary at a birthing center or a home birth in some aspects, but it's still really good to have it to reference back for easy reminders for the people serving you, because even at a birth center, there's multiple midwives. Like, there's a lot of people going through there. They're not might be going to remember. And I do think that for a birthing center and a home birth, you should have a second birth plan or birth preferences sheet for a hospital transfer, because again, you want to think about what those options are prior to being shoved into that situation. And now you're emotional and trying to make logical decisions. And that's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think as we're talking about all of this, one thing I'm thinking about too is that birth plans are not just how you communicate with your providers. That's a big piece of it, of kind of setting the tone and communicating with them about the things that are most important to you. But it's also a hugely important educational tool for yourself in knowing what options are available to you and where they're available. So like we're talking about, things like birthing tubs. Is that even an option where you're planning on giving birth? Or are you going to put, I want a birthing tub on my birth plan and there's no tub available at your hospital or something like that? So researching what things are available to you, just even knowing what the options are as you are creating this birth plan throughout your pregnancy, I think is such a huge aspect of this, because so many people walk in not knowing what is available to them, what things are going to happen and are not going to happen. And maybe it's people who have this dream birth scenario and they want all of these things. And then they bring in this birth plan to their provider at 36 weeks to go over it. And their provider's like, well, we don't have that. And we don't do this. And I absolutely say no to this. And all of these different things. And then you have to make some quick decisions on what you want to do with those situations. So I think that's a lot of it too, is kind of setting your expectations, learning what options are available, and then figuring out, bringing in and having that conversation. And I highly recommend everyone do that at normally your 36-week visit.
Process of creating the birth plan is as important as the birth plan itself. Like the process of you taking the autonomy of your birth and like, yes, I'm going to learn about what this entails. That is so important. And I always say early and often. Introduce these ideas to your provider early and often, because I actually recommend doing it before 36 weeks. Because if you find out at 36 weeks that you said, I want to push on all fours, or I want the option to push on all fours, and your provider's like, you can push there, but you can't deliver there because we need to receive the baby with you on your back. Whoa, that's totally incongruent with what you wanted. And now it's probably too late to change providers. So that's going to be a really important piece of the process, is talking to your provider early and often, because if you guys don't match up on something, you don't want to be fighting with your provider in your birth space. And this is not an episode about childbirth education, but taking a childbirth education course is what helps you learn what some of these things are. And of course, you can do your research on like evidencebasedbirth.com or whatever. But this is why we require within our company people to take a childbirth education class that's local to them, because a local childbirth educator should know the majority of the options that are available in the area you're in. Whereas, like, for example, Badass Mother Birther, she has a childbirth education course. I think it's awesome. I think it's still valuable, but somebody needs to have a conversation with someone that's in their area, because what's available to her in the California area or whatever may not be what's available here. So at least having a consultation with somebody, if you don't have a doula, if you didn't have a childbirth ed class that was near you, making sure you're asking a lot of questions that are your specific location allowances or policies, or even availability of, what do they put in your epidurals? We don't know. Do you have nitrous available at that hospital? If you have that on your birth plan, again, that's incongruent. You literally can't have it there.
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone who, with my first baby, I did not take a childbirth education class. I did like an online something through Baby Center that was totally not helpful. But as I was creating my birth plan, because on the checklist of things to do as a first-time mom said, create your birth plan. So I went and I found something. And as I was creating that birth plan, that was really where I got a lot of my education on like what things I can expect, like delayed cord clamping. What the heck is delayed cord clamping? And, oh, I want skin to skin. Well, why would I want that? I want to delay the bath. Why would I want to delay the bath?
Yes.
Like talking about all of these different things and kind of like just doing the smallest amount of research on it as I created this birth plan was how I knew anything about what to expect about when I walked into that hospital. And it was really helpful in kind of educating myself and communicating with my providers, even in a time when I didn't know a whole lot and I didn't do a whole lot to educate myself. So I think if you do absolutely nothing else, at least do this piece, I think.
Yeah. You don't have to have a doula to have a birth plan or a birth preferences sheet.
Yeah. So I think the other aspect when we're talking about birth plans, and this is where I think the conversation about providers' feelings about birth plans comes into play, is that birth plans are not contracts. I am not writing this plan and then holding everyone in the room, including my baby and myself, to this contract. And we're not signing it. We're not doing it. I do hear some people have their provider like sign off physically on their birth plan so that maybe if they have an on-call person come in who wasn't their provider, they know that they've at least discussed these things with their own provider. But for the most part, a birth plan is not a contract. Like we said at the beginning, there are things on that plan that are going to get tossed out, and there are things on that plan that are just not going to be possible. But what a birth plan is this is, if the choice is available to me, if everything is going well, I'm healthy and my baby's healthy, this is what I would like to happen. Can I change my mind if I have on there that I don't want an epidural? Can I change my mind when I am 7 centimeters and I've been there for 3 hours? 100% I can.
Yeah.
I can change my mind if I'm 4 centimeters. And I
always tell people to put things that are the most restrictive on there, like the most restrictive you think you'd want to be. Put that on there, and you can always broaden it and open it. And if there's something you don't care about, don't put it on there. Because we don't want to just fluff it. We want it to be concise so that it's easy to read, easy to communicate what you want, and easy for a nurse to just look at and like pick out the thing that she needed to be able to find.
Yes.
But yeah, it's not a contract, and it doesn't mean that someone's going to speak for you or not allow you to change your mind. There are other things that you can do, like medical power of attorney and stuff like that. Like those are not the same thing as a birth plan. So having one of these is, I just think the responsible thing to do.
I think so too. And I think it's also important to talk about these things with your partner as well. We've had scenarios where partners are like, well, this is on her birth plan and I don't want to let her get an epidural because she said she didn't want one. And I think she's going to be so disappointed later.
Pineapple.
Say it.
Pineapple.
Yeah.
It's a code word.
Code words. Have code words.
Have a code word.
That's a great
one.
Have
a code word. I want to change what's on my birth plan.
Yeah, but I think having that conversation with your partner about, hey, this is what my expectations are for this birth plan. I'm not expecting you to hold me to everything on here. If I change my mind or if something happens, that's okay. But whenever it is possible, this is what I want to happen. This is what I want you to help me advocate for. And if something changes, we can have that conversation. But no nurse is going to hold up your birth plan and say, well, it says right here under bullet point 3 that you are not getting an epidural. So even though you've asked for one, you're not getting one. No nurse is going to say that. They're going to say, you want an epidural? Okay, let's go. Let me get those fluids going. I'll call anesthesia right now.
That's right.
That happens, guys.
But one more thing. This is also not a timeline. It is not a blueprint. We recently had a parent who their plan had changed. They were going in for an induction instead of having a spontaneous labor. And all of a sudden, they wanted to put very specific things on there because they still wanted to hold on to some piece of control. And I understand the desire to do that, but we don't know what you're going to need at different times in your birth. So putting like, I want you to do hip squeezes at hour number whatever, or I want you to allow me to be in the shower. I'm going to get in the shower at hour whatever to whatever. Like there is no blueprint. There is no amount of time. We don't know how long it's going to take. It might be fast. It might be slow. There might be hiccups along the way. This is just a rough draft of like, if best case scenario, if I would love if we can do all of these things. It doesn't have to be a rigid argumentative point. We don't want this to be something that we're all arguing about. This is a communication device.
Yeah, absolutely. I say it all the time and I will hold to it. Creating a plan for anything in life is important. When I talk about going on vacation or taking my kids to the water park, I have a plan on how I want that to go. Is it going to go according to plan? No. It is not going to go according to plan. Some child is going to have to go to the bathroom 4 times in the 30-minute drive home. Yes, that happened to me last week. Get ready for it.
Do you remember what happened to me when we went together?
No.
I drove an hour across town to the water park and my kid showed up with no shoes.
Oh, yeah.
He had not put shoes on when he got in the car. We were supposed to go to Costco after we went to the water park. We didn't get to do that because we didn't have shoes.
Kids, man. They're going to do what they're going to do. This is the whole, I think that pregnancy and birth and everything is just a crash course in parenthood because your toddler is going to throw an absolute fit when you have plans for something and you're going to have to pivot in those plans. Have a plan, be ready to pivot.
Yeah.
That's it. That's parenting. That's all you need to know.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, I hope this was helpful for you guys. Make sure that you make a birth preferences sheet or a birth plan, if for nothing else other than to educate yourself and as a communication device. And we will talk to you next time.
Thank you for joining us on Birth, Baby. Thanks again to Longing for Orpheus for our music. You can look him up on Spotify. Remember to leave a review, share, and follow wherever you get your podcasts. See you next week.